Social media platforms which fail to seek out and block threatening messages, coercive control and stalking all could face huge fines.
They're among the offences which have been added to the online safety bill, and the Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries can tell us a little more. She joins us now from Gloucestershire. Very good morning to you, Nadine Dorries. What tangible difference do you think this will make to people's safety online?
Huge. The Malicious Communications Act of 1998 obviously has not kept up with what's happened on the internet over the last 10 years. And as we all know, I think you would look hard to find any individual who regularly uses online platforms who has not experienced some sort of adverse experience, and particularly children. And what we're announcing today is just one very small part of the bill, which is some additional criminal offences that we are accepting as recommendations from the Law Commission, and a list of priority offences which we are putting on the front of the bill. But I just want to emphasise that this is I could be on your programme all morning talking about the bill itself, because it is a very extensive bill, a whole section on protecting children alone. But this today is just about the priority offences and new criminal offences which we're creating.
Yeah, and you will know very well, and everyone at home will know, it really matters to people because it's part of their everyday lives and their family lives and their children's lives. What's the earliest point? As I understand it, there is a delay after the bill is brought in before you can bring in these sanctions. Is that right?
No, actually, well, it depends which sanctions you're talking about. But, you know, one of the most important points about this is, and particularly as a result of listing the priority offences and the new criminal offences which we've accepted, is that online platforms can start making the changes now. They don't actually even need to wait for the bill, which, by the way, will be in front of the House within the next few weeks. So they don't even need to wait for us to take it to the Commons. They can see now what's in that bill, and they can start doing what they need to do to remove those harmful algorithms and to remove much of the damage that they do, particularly to young people and to society as a whole. So we're kind of giving them notice. The sanctions we're putting in place are pretty tough. 10% fines of annual turnover. For some of those online platforms, that runs into billions of pounds. I think with Meta, Facebook, that would be 18 billion. And criminal sanctions for named individuals within those organisations. You know, we are leading the world on this. The rest of the world is watching to see what we do, and we are going to get it right. And this bill is going to be probably one of the most important pieces of legislation to pass through Parliament in a very long time. And it's going to hold the feet to the fire of those online platforms that we know have just over 10 years been allowed free rein, have damaged lives of young people and adults, and will be held to account for the first time.
I'll just go back to my question, which was how soon can those sanctions be put in action? I know you said these companies could do this now. Clearly, that would be preferable. If they don't, when's the soonest you can use those sanctions you're talking about?
OK, so when I arrived in my job 4 months ago and I arrived in the department, the bill that was there, almost ready, I'm afraid was not fit for purpose and did have, I think it was 3 years. And I think that's probably the idea that people have, because the only draft bill people have seen so far is the original draft bill. I'm looking at reducing that to months.
When you say, well, the bill is being produced, so what does it say in the bill? What is the timings on it? So when can those sanctions be brought in? You've given us somewhere between 3 years and a few months. Which is it?
No. The bill hasn't been produced. The bill which is coming before the Commons is not yet ready to be produced. But we're looking at reducing criminal sanctions, which was in the original draft bill, at 3 years to more like 3 to 6 months.
So that's almost immediate. So that's effectively within months. So that's what you're saying. It was within 3 months. As soon as the bill is produced, within months, these sanctions could be brought into action.
So the sanctions will be a regulator, Ofcom, is going to be putting in place the systems and the processes with those online platforms by which we can hold them to account. We have to bear in mind that Ofcom are doing the work now to be ready for when the bill receives royal assent. But we do have to accept that this is a huge bill. and there are a huge number of offences. And that's why we put on the front of the bill a list of priority offences, taking into account recommendations by the Joint Committee and the DCMS Select Committee. So we're putting that list of priority offences on the face of the bill, which will make it easier to make those prosecutions happen much quicker.
Can I ask you, in your role as Culture Secretary, your view on the comments that we now know were in Jimmy Carr's, this was a performance on Netflix, a stand-up comedy performance in which he made reference to the Holocaust. You'll be familiar with those comments. What's your reaction to that?
So interestingly, as someone who's preparing this bill to take forward within weeks to the House, this bill would not cover those comments. But we are looking at legislation via the media bill, which would bring into scope those comments from other video on demand streaming outlets like Netflix. So it's interesting that we're already looking at future legislation to bring into scope those sort of comments. This bill would not address that. Obviously, the comments were abhorrent, and they just shouldn't be on television.
Okay, well, so can I just get to? I'm not asking about this sort of the paraphernalia around whether or not you can do anything. I'm asking for you as Culture Secretary, your response to what he has said. For those who've not seen it, he made reference to the Holocaust and the traveller community, and made disparaging remarks about the deaths of thousands of gypsies at the hands of the Nazis. Can I ask what you make of that?
I think I was stunned, almost disbelieving when I first saw it last night, and just shocked. I mean, there were abhorrent, appalling comments. It's hard to believe that anybody in their right mind thought that that was acceptable and appropriate to make such comments based on the pain and suffering, not only and the deaths of not so many people, but the pain and suffering of so many families. I was as shocked as everyone else.
I'm just looking back at one of the tweets you made in the past, 2017 this was, it's a long time ago, granted, in which you said that left-wing snowflakes are killing comedy.
Well, that's not comedy. What Jimmy Carr did last night is not comedy. And, you know, I'm no angel on Twitter, nobody is, but I just would like to say that nothing I've ever put on Twitter has been harmful or abusive. But that last night was Jimmy Carr's comments. That was, no one can call that, you know, snowflake or wokishness. It was just appalling. It doesn't even, that tweet, that comment, and what Jimmy Carr did, there's no relationship between the two.
OK, let's move on to other issues. Have you spoken to the Prime Minister recently in the last 24 hours?
Why? Why are you asking me that question?
I'd like to know.
We've communicated.
I'm really confused. Is that a difficult question? I'm just asking if you've spoken to the Prime Minister in the last 24 hours.
We have communicated.
OK. What has he communicated to you?
Well, I'm not going to tell you the extent of my communications with the Prime Minister. I mean, I've answered your question. We have communicated. What is your next question?
What's his mood?
I'd say his mood was very, very positive, extremely positive. I mean, onwards is one of his favourite expressions. I think he's very positive.
Has he changed?
Changed what?
His attitude.
To what?
To the way he runs the government. We're told that he sent out messages saying that, I remember the quote, him saying in the Commons, "I've got it, I get this," about things that have been done wrong. And the implication was that he was going to do business slightly differently. Indeed, he sent a letter to backbench MPs saying there's going to be more interaction. So my question is a pretty fundamental one, which is the impression we're supposed to take now that Boris Johnson admits that things should have been done differently, and I think that's his words, and I'm not trying to change any meanings around that. The implication of that is somehow a different Boris Johnson is emerging. Is he exactly the same in your book?
So your question was actually very open-ended and non-specific. But what I would say is that the Prime Minister, when he appeared before the 22 committee last week, promised change. And I think anybody who picks up a newspaper or reads a newspaper, sees a television news bulletin can see that a huge amount of change is underway at present, particularly in number 10. MPs wanted the structure within number 10. And to be fair, the number 10 office has simply not changed in a way which can accommodate a modern prime minister and a modern government function. And so that change is now underway in number 10. And, you know, I think the prime minister is, he is very aware. There are 365 MPs, and he's very aware of those who are in the marginal seats that we need to continue to keep fighting for. We have the biggest majority since Margaret Thatcher. He's very aware of that, those MPs in those northern seats, those red wall seats. He knows what we have to do to deliver for those. And I think that's his mood, is to keep on delivering in the way we have been delivering with the biggest
Let me ask you a precise question. Do you think there's a coup? Do you think there is plotting by Rishi Sunak to replace the Prime Minister?
No, look, what I'd say is you have to look at what the Prime Minister and Rishi have been working on together recently. I mean, just this week, there was an announcement in the House to help those who are dealing with the rising cost of living. And that was an agreement and a deal reached together with the Prime Minister and Rishi. So I do realise that, you know, as I said, we have a 360.
Okay, now I'm very mindful our time is limited. I don't want to repeat things. Let me, if I may, I want to put the comments of Nick Gibb, who's a former schools minister. I'm sure you know well, much respected in his role for many years. We've spoken to him many times here on Breakfast. And I'm going to read out, for people who haven't heard it yet this morning, his comments as he spoke about the Prime Minister. He said the Prime Minister accepted the resignation of Allegra Stratton for joking about a Christmas party that she hadn't attended, but he won't take responsibility for those he did attend. He goes on to say, I am sorry to say that it is hard to see how it can be the case that the Prime Minister told the truth. This is Nick Gibb, Conservative MP, a former schools minister. What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, can I just say the points you've quoted in that article, as you know, I find it interesting that people continue to comment on something which is now in the hands of the Met Police and is part of a police investigation. I'm not going to answer those comments. But what I would say is there are a number of MPs, ex-ministers, and a small number of MPs, many in safe seats, who are the same names that we continually keep to hear cropping up. And some of those names have been exercised tried to get David Cameron out and Theresa May out, and now trying to get Boris Johnson in. And the truth is, no Prime Minister will please any of those. But
I need to ask you then, given what Nick Gibb has said, would you care to repeat your assertion that Boris Johnson tells the truth? And I want to put two caveats on this, because you are very keen to ask me to be precise about my questions. And I'll put two of these in the mix. One is that he has lied over the issue of people in work, where he has chosen to say in the Commons that there are more people in work than there were prior to the pandemic, which in fact relates to those in payroll, but overall, including freelancers, we know that not to be the case. So that is a very straightforward issue of fact, which he has carried on saying in the Commons, despite the fact of being disproved.
So there are more people on the payroll than there were.
That's not what the Prime Minister has said.
Well, it could even be more people. So I don't know I mean, you kind of bowled that one at me. I don't know the details.
Okay, let me give you another one. So you don't know about that one.
Yes,
let me give you another one. That's fine. I accept.
Please.
Nadine Dorries, I accept. You don't know about that one. So let's move on quickly. Let's talk about other issues in relation to him saying he understood and was clear and given clear and precise information that social distancing was in place at all times at those parties. Are you still standing by his comments?
So first of all, on the payroll comment, you asked me specifically, does the Prime Minister tell the truth? He will have been given by advisors and researchers the fact that there were more people in work than there were at the beginning of the pandemic, not on the payroll. So did he tell the truth when he quoted that? Yes, he told the truth as it was given to him. On terms of social distancing, and you can't compare. Yes, I do, and the Prime Minister does tell the truth. And in terms of, a workplace, and I've said this before, number 10 is not a house. It is a building which houses 400 people with an iconic front door. It is a department. I don't think a lot of people really understand that. And it was a workplace, the same as a staff room in a school was a workplace, or a hospital was a workplace. It was a workplace with 400 people inside and a warrant of small rooms. Was social distancing carried out? I didn't work in number 10. I've not been into the offices of number 10 to work during that period of time. So I personally can't tell you what I saw, but I can personally tell you that the Prime Minister, when he stands at the dispatch box and makes quotes like the one you just quoted, it's because the researchers and his advisors will have given him that quote, and he was truthful to the best of his knowledge when he made that quote.
Nadine Dorries, thank you very much for your time this morning. Nadine Dorries is the Culture, Media and Sports Secretary.